morning from Vancouver, Canada. And yeah, interesting to try this new way of presenting. Used to being involved with so many people. And as you can see, I've got a lovely green screen, I've been working at home for, gosh, well over 20 years. And my advice to you is make a space that makes you feel really creative and that you really like coming to. So hence my flamingo dream color. Should I have known that we were going to do more of this, I might have thought about a green. But anyways, here we go. So I'm going to share my screen now so you can see my presentation. And feel free to ask questions throughout. We've got quite a bit of time. My intent is to share with you some of the thoughts that I've got around development, about developer relations, about measuring that journey, and about metrics, of course. And myself and working with James Parton, we're going to be writing a book on developer relations. We're up to about 100 pages now, so we've been really, really busy. And so some of the things are some templates that we put in place that we've used with our work over the last little while, but also we're hoping that are going to work for you and for the community at large. So feel free to comment, ask questions, yeah, and just let us know how things are working for you. So here we go. Share screen. And there we go. So I'm talking about measuring your developer's journey, as I mentioned. And here's something from Lao Tzu, that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So everybody's got to start somewhere. And that's important to think about when you're developing the journey for your developer audience. Where do you want them to start? So I found this other quote that said, the first step in a journey is to lose your way. And I thought, okay, well, maybe if I was going to go and travel around the world and see a number of different things, I'd want to lose my way a little bit, because then it's just much more exciting. But when we're talking about developer relations, we don't want our developer to lose their way when they're coming into your developer relations program, if they're coming into your portal, because that's just going to get them frustrated. And we've heard a number of talks over the last little while talk about friction, and that's exactly what you don't want to happen. So you don't want them to lose their way. So what we've been saying is all great developer journeys start with a map. So one of my colleagues had that. So thank you to Dana for that quote. So here's the developer journey map that we came up with. And I'm going to show this a few times, and we'll also make it available to you. And it's changed a bit for us over time. And it's always important to think about just developer relations as a whole too, as something that's quite fluid, because we know that it can fall under marketing, it can fall under product, it can also fall under support and success. And the whole developer experience piece too is sort of a more of a tighter piece that some of the rest of it can be. So know that this can be fluid, but there certainly is a stage that developers follow in terms of discovering you, evaluating what you have, learning about it, because as we know, developers like to learn and try things out to really understand if it's something that they're going to use. Then they're going to build something, and if it's something and the right timing for them, they'll scale it. And so understanding what you need to provide along this journey is really important. So if we take a look under discovery, there's a number of things that are much more marketing focused around making sure your SEO is up to date, and you're doing some things that are social and some things that are event based, and you've got your blogs. And of course, in this phase, we talk about from those key owned touch points that you have, and the key external or the earned touch points, where you might earn them or you might purchase them. So there's a number of different pieces around that. And then, of course, when they are going to come a little deeper and they've actually made their way to your portal, they're going to evaluate it. And what do devs do first? They're going to go to your documentation and go like, can I even understand this? Or perhaps it's behind, a closed wall, or it's in a PDF that's just going to waste my time. Those are friction points, which I'm sure that you've heard about before. As they go on to learn about what you're doing, the first thing they tend to do is like, how quickly can I put a time to hello world together? How fast is that? Does it make sense to me? If I'm doing any cutting and pasting of code samples, are there errors there? Onto the build, they're going to try and figure out how quickly they can actually put something together. They're going to take a look too at, is there value for money if there's a charging model that you have? How do they get support? And then, of course, when they're ready to move it into production. Now, you see in this map too, in the center, we put a sort of circle around the developer experience. And I often find, and I've even been guilty of this as well, that the developer experience piece often gets mixed up with the whole larger developer journey map. And so the whole journey map really looks at, from when developers find out about you to actually when they've built something with your tool or with your product, and that they continue to do something. And the developer experience part is really more about the product and the portal that you have and the documentation that goes around with it. So we're going to go through a few more of these steps. I'm going to show you some examples and talk about a couple of other things. So it always comes back to, this journey and this map. It's like, where do you actually want developers to start? Because if you're not thinking about where you want them to start, they're going to come at it from a number of different places, and they might go off in a different direction that you want to, or they might, come into your developer portal or find out about you at an event and actually go off in a different direction that you don't want them to, and then you're going to lose them, and you don't want that to happen. So first, I just want to back up a sec and talk about just developer relations as a whole, because I do find too that we often get a little bit mixed up in where we want to measure everything, or we don't know what we measure. We don't know what our budgets are, and we might be in different parts of a developer relations community or a company, and it's quite different than maybe what one of your peers is doing, and sometimes it changes too. We've definitely heard from people where, developer relations and marketing, but now we're reporting to product. And so it's just important for you to understand that. And so when we come in and talk to folks about developer relations, we follow a little bit of a playbook. And first, there's got to be this common understanding of, what is developer relations and who developers are and what that business model is. You need to get alignment on the corporate goals. And that's something that's just so super important, and that we often find as well that developers or folks within DevRel don't often know or even try and find out what those corporate goals are, and that's so important. And of course, I hope you're all going through your developer segmentation and your persona development and your messaging to get that correct. And then you can finally activate your strategy and put together that activity and content plan that you want. And then of course, measuring and reviewing metrics. So if we want to start with what that common understanding is in terms of developer relations, and again, this can get really confusing to some of us. I often see, even to this day, developer relations is over 20 years old, and there's still a lot of folks going, well, what is developer relations? And, to that extent, it can get a little bit confusing with some of the nomenclature. So, it's really two things. It's all of this. It's this professional practice of how we engage with developers. And it includes the pieces of developer marketing, developer experience, developer access, and developer relations is even a part of that, which is, tends to be the part where that's the most direct interaction with the community. So it's a professional practice. It's also a set of activities. And when you understand those pieces, it makes it a little bit easier to understand how you're going to put some of your metrics and how you're going to put some of your strategy together. And you may be part of a developer marketing team, which is more about the outreach. And, that's where developers are discovering and evaluating who you are, what you have to offer. The whole developer experience, as we talked about, is on the product, the self-serve portal, and the documentation that you provide. Then you've got developer success, which is nurturing those developers. Some of it's support. Some of it is, working with them for their contributions, and you might have a developer advisory board, but it's also account management, because this is still part of a business that we're part of, and developer relations can play a piece in all of those parts. So when you're thinking about your measurement, again, you need to understand what that vision is within the company, but also how you can make a difference based on where you are and how you're working with the developers that are in your community. So if we go back to the developer journey then in all of this, again, when developers are first discovering you, is this of use to me? Can it help solve my problems? Are you even credible? You're somebody who we really want to work with? They also want to look into and see if it's, has somebody else used this, because unless you're a beta tester or even an alpha tester or know the folks, nobody really wants to be the first person to try this out. Evaluate it. Will it meet my needs? Learning about it. How does it even work? Are the docs good? Do I have confidence in this company and this product to be able to build what I need to build? Finally, I'm ready to build it. Definitely going to make a proof of concept and find out, is there some support here? Is there some value for the money? And then using it in production. And then can I do some more things with it? How can I give feedback? How can I contribute? And that's even where developer relations jumps in a lot more, to be able to use those folks as champions. So again, I just want to iterate a note about this journey, is that there's not necessarily hard lines. It shifts, based on your company, what your product is, where you fit in the company, what the goals are, and what your metrics are. And for those of you, I hope, that have had an opportunity to take a look at the state of developer relations, we found that there's no dominant functional reporting structure for DevRel. You can see here that marketing tends to be a little stronger, but not necessarily. And it quite makes a difference too, whether you've got a big company or a small company, or whether you're a developer first company or a developer plus company. So, if you look at this and go, well, I'm really putting our portal goes here and some of the experience stuff might fall into here, that's okay, because things will shift a little bit. It's more important that you really understand what the big picture is and have those pieces in place. So if we take a look too at what those pieces are, and this might help you think about it again when we overlay the developer relations components on top of the journey map, you see on one hand developer marketing, more again around that discovery part. But, sometimes those of us in developer marketing, we're writing documentation and code samples as well. And developer relations, again, goes across all those pieces. So again, it's good to see sort of where those pieces are, where you might play, and who you might have to play with too. But at the end of the day, it's all about what we're here for, right? So developer relations and that goal is about, how are you going to enable, how are you going to help a developer to be successful with your product? And we found within our developer relations survey too, and that's why I had to put product there. Some folks are going, well, what do you mean by product? But when we talk about developer relations, we talk about that developer product. So it's your API, it's your SDK, it's your HDK, maybe some developer tooling, the marketplace, a library. And all along, you want them to be successful with your product, but you've got to align with your own corporate goals. If you're not aligning with your corporate goals, it doesn't really matter how successful the developers are. Somebody's probably going to cut your program anyways. So it's really important that those be in balance. And when you think about what drives developers, it's really that pride of going, I made that. So you want to make sure you've got a great journey, that you're aligned, and that you're measuring the right type of things too, because otherwise you can have a really sad developer. And again, you can have a great program when they're developing some great things, and from your level things are really successful. But if you're part of a really big company, and James Parton often tells this story where he was in Telefonica, where they're making billions of dollars. And even though the program was really successful, making billions of dollars and some really interesting products were being made, because it's just so small and there really wasn't a great alignment to what corporation was thinking, the program got canned. So you might have done everything you needed to do to make developers successful with the product, but that overall perspective is so important. So there's factors that affect the time to completion of your developer journey, which is also the way, developer adoption of your product. And we tend to see developer adoption quite different than what we see adoption in other consumer or business products. And the adoption can take a much longer period of time. And also, you can get a subscriber coming in or somebody who's a user of something, haven't yet paid yet, and it might be a really long time until they actually, go and develop something that can scale. Some things you can control with this, and others that you can't. So, you can control how much awareness you're doing, the friction in your product, the friction in your docs, the support, your pricing, and the engagement you've got with the community. But you can't control their own motivation. Maybe they're just giving something a try, and you can't really control their product readiness either. You can do your best to have something that's great for them, but maybe the project manager or their company is going, we'll learn about this, and maybe we're thinking about adding this in later. But what you can start to influence and support them with is their ability to influence or their decision-making ability. So that also comes into how that journey is set up and for you helping them on this adoption journey. So we get back to this developer journey map, and you might be going, oh my goodness, this is a lot of stuff to think about, or I'm hoping you're looking at it going, yeah, I can use this. If not, again, I'm hoping you guys will be some beta testers for us. Take a look at it and try it. Let me know what's missing from it. How would you maybe do something a little bit different? Because I think, as a developer relations community, I think it's important that we, have some tools that we use and work together to support, all of us, which is, a lot of what this conference is about. And so, when we get back to it, and I'm going to show you some examples of how we've used this journey, is the developer journey begins when they first learn about you. So you've got to get the awareness right before you even think about, I've always thought the docs were the most important, and they are really important, but if developers don't get into the journey at the right spot, it doesn't really matter. So, when we look at the research, there's sort of, I say 4 + 1, 5 ways that developers learn about you. Google search always comes up as number 1. So you've got to optimize for that. It's peers, they're going to find out through different places that they hang out online or conferences or somebody that they've known that they're going to talk to, GitHub and or Stack Overflow. And then your team, what's your team doing in terms of the events they're going to, the social that they're doing, the developer media that they're engaged with. And then there's a whole pile of other stuff in terms of the way they learn about you. But you really need to optimize for those top 4. And so when we go in and do friction logging or look at the developer journey, we ask developers who do it for us to, try and find it. How long does it actually take you to find what you're looking for? How many pages do you hit? What do you think that's great? What's not? What's irksome, pain points, friction. There's obviously a typo there. Too many steps, information is hidden, and maybe what are solutions to fix that. So I'm going to just take you through a quick journey, and then we'll look at some metrics. We too, you've got to look at it from your persona's perspective. And we also look at it based on they have never heard about you before. They're already a customer, but maybe not part of your developer program, or they're a current customer, and there's maybe a new tool that you've got. And then where their starting point is, if they don't know about you, maybe they want to do something based on, I don't know, telecom API. So they type in telecom API. Where are they going to end up on a Google search? And that's where, again, you need to try and control where they're going to land. So let's take a look at something that we did and looked at. So here's the developer journey. This was a persona of a new developer, put in some generic search term. And what you'll see in the red box down below is some actual developer, what they wrote about. So they still couldn't figure out, they actually did some research, actually landed on the landing page of the corporate page. So they didn't quite get to the developer relations, your developer program page yet. And they looked at it and they go, I can't figure out what these guys are doing. And, oh, there's some case studies. I'm going to look at those because those will probably give me a better sense of what this company is doing. And the case studies would require that you registered for them. It's like, well, I'm not going to do that unless I don't even know if I'm interested yet. And right away, it's like, you know what? I'm out of here. So you've already lost them. So we tried again with a new persona. And again, a new developer hasn't heard about you. Or maybe heard about you from somebody, so they know your company name, but they do a search on, your company and your API, or your company and your tool. And still they haven't reached the developer portal. Finally, they get into it, still really confused about what it is. As you could see with some of the issues, there just wasn't enough to keep them there, give them a sense of what they needed to do, and why it was really important for them to be there. So, they stopped looking. So, they haven't even gone to the rest of the journey yet. This is another persona. They're doing another search. Again, they heard about you, so they actually go to your, sort of corporate website. And again, finding some similar things where registrations are required and just, not going to spend any more time with it. And they haven't even gotten to your docs yet to find out if you've done something really interesting with them. Another persona we said is actually familiar with who you are. Maybe they're a customer in another area of the business, or they're an ISV, or some sort of a partner with you, and or maybe their company is, and some project manager says, I've heard these guys have got a new API out or a new SDK. Can you go check it out? So they know right away to go. Where do they go? Because they're familiar with it. They understand what you do. But if here's exactly what a developer was saying. Well, I looked at the video, but it was all marketing fluff. Not getting a good feeling about this. Okay, I kind of get what they're doing, but not really sure how to access it. Finally found a link that tells me a little bit more about your APIs, but I have to log in to find out even what you're offering. I'm gone. This one, familiar, know you have a product, goes actually straight to your developer page, but finding a lot of the similar things. So these slides you can sort of take a look at in another time, and I'm sure you're familiar with some of this friction logging, as we've seen from some of the other speakers. This one, similar type of thing where they actually sign in, but then the API key doesn't work. So, making sure that all of those things are really important, are complete and are ready for your developer on their journey is really important. So again, it all comes back to, where do you actually want your developer to start? So for some of you who are technical, are going, oh, what do we need all this marketing for? If you don't market properly and have that set up, they're not even going to find your great documentation and to be able to get started with your product. So that starting point is really important. So when you think through all this, the possible scenarios of how a developer might learn and find out about you, map them out, make it easy for them, reduce that friction, and it's those touch points that need to be accessible when it's the right time for them, not necessarily the right time for you. And we often find using this journey map is really important when you're starting your program, launching a new product, and just periodically to audit how effective your journey is. We certainly find that, you've got a new, you put something on a change log, but you forgot to change your documentation. And, the developers who are actually developing the product don't always think about all of those pieces that need to be done. And also think about who is actually in the decision-making unit of that whole journey map, because it's not always just the developer. Sometimes it's the product manager, or if you're in something like machine learning, there's data scientists and data engineers and product managers in that too. So it's important that you do those mapping and your personas ahead of time. Okay, let's finally get to measurement, because that's what this day is supposed to be about. So as Seth says, measurement is great. But you need to make sure that you're measuring what's important. And we always come back to, you want to measure what's relevant to your business, because if it's not, your program's not probably going to be around for very long. So as Vera said, I thought you did a great presentation on the OKRs. Exactly that. So you're measuring your priorities, and so you can communicate what they are, work with the team. But it's that last bit, it's about forecasting, it's about making improvements, but it's also proving your existence. For developer relations, if we think more about how we fit into the overall company and the overall team, that's a really important piece that we can't forget about. And we want to make sure that we're doing right by developers. So, we've got our business goals and objectives, and then the developer program, and then activity and community metrics. And again, alignment with corporate goals is imperative. If you're going to be misaligned in your goals, do it for the right reasons, right? Because you've exceeded your goals and doing something really great, and you're driving that ROI for the business. Otherwise, if you're misaligned, it's very easy that your program could get cut, or you keep getting tossed around, and not getting the resources that you really need, whether it's budget, or extra people, and support within the company as a whole, because you do need to work. And DevRel people have understood this, I think, just innately from the beginning, that we do need to work with a number of different types of people within our companies and outside the companies too. So we need to make sure that we're really aligned with what's happening, about that buy-in corporately. So there's a number of different stages around metrics that you can go through when you look at the developer journey. And here's how we've mapped them out this way. So if you map your developer journey with your own developer relations journey, kind of looks like this. So you're creating that awareness, you're trying to activate them, you're getting them engaged, and then you want to retain them. And the other piece that's important in metrics, again, it's about looking at that big corporate picture, is the stages of the funnel. And here's why. If you're just focusing on, the DevRel lead, or the marketing qualified lead, or even, just the subscribers, or how many social media followers you have, if we go back to the slide that talks about, your alignment, you're going to be out of line. Most companies have got some sort of a product. They're using HubSpot, they're using Marketo, they're using Salesforce, and there's a funnel stage in there. And you need to be able to link into that, again, to be able to get that credibility that you need within the company, and just to be able to monitor, what's working and what you're driving towards. So if you can also think about what you're doing in terms of these funnel stages, I think you'll be a lot more successful in what you're doing. And so here we link the developer journey to some of those, sort of do a deeper dive on the call to action and the metrics. Again, your journey, DevRel journey, what's that thing that you're really looking for developers to do that you can actually measure, that contributes to the company as a goal? So with an awareness, it's signups and follows. Great, but we need to keep moving along, where we want them, what's that call to action? We want them to register, we want them to install or try the free tool, we're looking for feedback. When they're starting to engage and learn and build, we want them to register, not just register and start something, but maybe it's a premium version, or maybe we want to keep pushing them up the chain too, to do more, to build more, and to also pay more, because most of us are in companies, and then eventually when they start to really be liking what you're doing and building and scaling, we want their feedback, we want them to contribute, we want them to refer. I think sometimes in developer relations, we're still in the awareness stage, and we think people are kind of interested, and we're hoping that they could get into this community and contribute really quickly. You got to make sure you're building them through this journey, and you're sort of watching these metrics along the way. So I've listed out a number of different metrics. Again, they can be a little bit fluid, and they might change a little bit depending on what your organization looks like. but you really want to sort of build them out over time. And the one piece that's important to think about, and Vera talked about it too, and I sort of call it transactions, or it's really about that activity rate. What is it? It might be a monthly active user for some companies, and that's certainly a metric we see a lot of, especially in for startups and different companies. But for your own tool or product, it might be something totally different. But you will know that based on what your product is. Like, how are you going to know if somebody's active and adopting? That's sort of a really key metric that you need to talk about. Is it just an API call, or is it just an SDK download, or is it the number of calls? Is it how active they are, or is it knowing what kind of a product that tool has gone into, and how do you measure that, and how do you get that kind of feedback? Couple slides here on conversion. So if we look just back at this slide, it's also like, how do you know if your developers are moving along the spectrum that you'd like them to? So you need to take a look at those conversion rates, and here's something sort of quickly that you can take a look at, where when does that subscriber become a lead, when does it become a user, an opportunity, and when does it become a customer? And when you take a look at that through the journey, you go, okay, well, maybe we touched this many people, and then this many people signed up for the newsletter, and this many people registered, and then this many people actually integrated that product. So you can kind of see, and if you monitor that over time, and if you find out where things are missing, you got to go back to the journey and go, well, what isn't right that we've lost so many as we've moved along. This kind of goes through that same stage, but when you see it, it's like, so the overall conversion rate is 2%. Is that good? Maybe, but you'll know when you track that over time, and also when you put a budget towards that and go, we spent $3 million on this big event and we only got 2%. Maybe 2% is good for you, but maybe it's not. But understanding where that is and how that conversion is happening is very important to track. And again, if you go back, okay, well, why did that happen? Why aren't there enough people coming in and subscribing? Well, maybe your evangelist isn't getting out there enough, or you're not really getting that message honed. The hook isn't strong enough. Maybe you need to do a few more surveys and focus groups and some beta testers to really find out what's going on. If they're abandoning registrations, is it a clunky process, or is the documentation again just not really convincing them that this is what they want to do? And if they haven't actually become a customer, it could be pricing, that whole business model. So those are things to think about in terms of metrics along the way. Don't forget the value. So, you can measure, again, all those activities that you're doing, and those are important to think about. But if you don't actually think about where the value is in the business of actually, leading somebody to a sale, and it's often debated in developer relations where, we're not salespeople, but you're part of a business, and we still need to follow the value and be very aware of what that is and how it works within the company to make sure that the program really stays around and is really successful. So, does everybody have a developer journey map? I'm curious. And are you leading your developers down the pathway? Have you figured out what that value is? And let me know what I've missed. I know this is a short time to go through a presentation and a lot of the things to look at. So if anybody wants to take a look at the journey and a closer look up, and maybe with your reading glasses on, let me know. And always curious to know that, is anything I said, can you actually use in your job tomorrow or today? Because those of us are still starting our day today. Let me know. I'm really interested in uplifting developer relations to a point where we don't have to ask what it is anymore, and we don't have to keep asking how we measure things. We're just really familiar with it, and everybody else is familiar with it and respected with it as well. I like to always end my presentations with our cute little robot that says the future depends on our choices. So also be very thoughtful about how you go about your own journey in building a tech community and working with people and the type of tech that we want to build, because it's all up to us. So I'm finished on that one. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and come back to Taji and see if anybody has some questions for me. And then also, Matthew and I think we're going to look at our survey. So any questions for me on that? Hi again, Taji.
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. It's great presentation, and it seems that we have no questions from Slack and live comments.
Okay.
Right, but I'd like to comment to you. There's some
Sure.
things. Yeah, I think I felt that very great. For your session, your session included a kind of the everything about developer advocacy and the developer relations. I think so. Your explanation is a very how should I say, very systematic and easy to understand.
Thank you.
About the developer relations, and I think it was very helpful to the all of the audience who wants to learn what is what is developer advocacy. I think that's so. And I actually, as you explained, I also felt the need to organize my thoughts of the difference between developer experience and the developer relations. And you shown your slides for the any figure the covering the this area is a developer experience, this area is a developer marketing, right? It's very interesting for me because in my current work, so it sometimes feels like developer marketing and the developer experience are separated completely. So I think we are required to work seamlessly on this border, but company organization cannot accept to merge each work, the developer marketing and the developer advocacy. If you have any idea to improve this work seamlessly to for the developer relations, could you please advise for me and other audiences?
Sure. And, actually, I think some of the, we had a question on the developer survey that asked about how you work with other teams.
Mm-hmm.
And, what we've seen and what the survey was saying, you've got to have some shared goals,
Mm-hmm.
but you also kind of have to make friends,
Yeah.
You have to really, make friends so you can work with those other people and be able to not only have shared goals, but share a lot of that information, and for them to have confidence in you for what you can do.
I see. It's right. Exactly. It's a great idea. Therefore, I work also. So I'll try to do that. So and I hope some company, the some company, the CEO or CTO or other executives, please understand develop more detail. It seems the developer markets, of course, the developer advocate, developer evangelist, or the developer marketer, it understand very well about the developer, but executives cannot understand. It's hard to understand what is DevRel, right? So I have to more lots of executives can understand what is DevRel. How should evangelists? How should advocate do or execute for DevRel? I hope so.
Yeah, I think if we keep educating ourselves and talking about developer relations, I think that will happen. And also just, making sure everybody knows that developer relations is more about evangelists running around to events, because that's often how it's seen. And it's just, it's so much more than that. And I think that comes back to, too, it's not just about measuring how many events I went to and how many Twitter followers I have.
Yeah.
How are you contributing to the business?
Yeah.
Right. Those kinds of questions are really important, and you need to be able to speak very clearly and confidently about how that's contributing to the business.
Exactly, you're right. That we need to explain it's how effective to our business from the developer relations. That was our work. Exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And we're hoping our book is going to sort of bring a lot of those thoughts together too, in explaining, why developers are important. How many companies, got some DevRel component that you probably don't even think about. But also, there's a number of different ways that the business to developer business model works.
Yeah.
And being able to understand where the value comes in, and it's different for whether a company has an API or an SDK that helps with a device. It's hard to lump all those together too, and just being able to understand where you fit and being able to describe that value, so everybody is on the same page, so to speak, within a company is important.
I see. Yeah, I understand. Thank you. So actually, I hope the coming more questions from the Slack and YouTube, Twitch, but no questions now. So I'd like to move to the close your session. Thank you very much again for your great session. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Nice to meet you.